I titled this demonstration Sandhill Cranes. It's inspired largely by the Sandhill Crane population that resides just a few miles from my house. We live in an area along the Bay of Green Bay, and a little ways north of us up the shore is a nature preserve called Point Au Sable. There's quite a population of Sandhill Cranes in that area, and quite often we find them in our backyard and in the street in front of our house. There's another inspiration also for this demonstration. It goes back to a fellow named Joaquin Vincent, a turner from Texas, who showed his version of these cranes on a Worldwide Woodturners meeting a few weeks back. Off-center turning is often done by establishing multiple center points on both ends of a workpiece, some being done between centers. Other off-center turning projects are done with a tenon in a four-jaw scroll chuck on one end and multiple center points on the other end at the tailstock. In this case, we're doing something that is quite a bit different. This is the chuck that we'll be using. It's actually a fixture that is used in conjunction with a four-jaw chuck. This chuck was developed by a British woodturner named Paul Howard. I first started using one of these about 2 years ago, and I've done a number of pieces with the offset chuck, including the crooked box that I think you've seen in the instant gallery in some prior club meetings. It attaches to the four-jaw chuck through this mortise. Mortise is a dovetail mortise that in this case is fit to my 50mm Nova dovetail jaws. It can be used with any chuck that you have. You just have to make sure that the mortise is sized appropriately for your chuck jaws. The way that it works, it's actually quite simple. I'm going to pull the centering pin. By the way, the centering pin is the only real deviation that I've done from Paul Howard's original design. His didn't have a centering pin. And I include the centering pin so that I can go back to dead center in case I need to make some correction somewhere along the way or turn in dead center. This is the pivot point, and this is the articulating setting. You'll notice on the top of it there are a number of grooves. Each one of these grooves translates to roughly 5 degrees. So that it's possible to go 5, 10, 15, 20, or 25 degrees off-center for the offset. And you adjust to the offset that you want. And once you get it set there, you simply take a wrench and tighten the bolts down. And it gives you a nice secure hold. And your piece will then spin off-center. Now, the way the piece is attached to the chuck is there's actually two ways to do it. The way I'm going to show you here is a way that I actually don't make much use of. But I'll take it apart here. And on the back side of the face of the chuck, there are 9 holes. They're countersunk. And the idea is to use ordinary wood screws to drive through this into the workpiece. And you have to have, pretty long wood screws. And the reason that I tend not to use this method of mounting is that I'm never quite sure exactly where the end of those screws are. Even though I mark it, I measure it, there's always a risk that I get down too close to it, and hitting 9 screws with a bowl gouge, something's going to give, and it's usually the bowl gouge's sharp tip. So I tend not to use that method. The method that I use utilizes a glue block, and this is the piece that we'll be working on today. This is an identical chuck. The only difference is it has a glue block here, and the workpiece has a mortise on the end of it, or I'm sorry, a tenon that goes into a mortise that's in the end of the glue block. I tend to favor this because I think I get a nice secure hold, and I don't have to worry about where the screws are. The screws in the glue block actually terminate down in the body of the glue block here someplace, and the glue block itself ends right there, which will be the bottom of our piece today. The workpiece is secured in the off-center chuck that we described a few minutes ago, and that's mounted in a Nova 4-jaw scroll chuck, so we're ready to turn. Before we start turning, I want to direct your attention to the tailstock end, where I've drawn a circle that's about midway between the actual center point and the outside of our blank here. The blank, by the way, is about 3 inches in diameter and is about 10 inches in length. The importance of this circle will become evident as we get into doing the off-center turning. And before we turn the lathe on, no rings, no watches, no jewelry, no long hair, and most important of all, safety glasses. And ordinarily I would be wearing a face shield when I do a turning like this, especially if it has bark on, but because of the microphone, I'm going to do this without a face shield. Now that we have our piece laid out on the blank, we need to go off center. And to do that, first thing I need to do is to pull the centering pin. I'll take it out, put it up there, and loosen up our pivot point, and then the articulating setting. Pull the tailstock back. And I'm going to go about 20 degrees offset. And I'm going to bring my center point up. This is where the circle comes in handy. This is actually about 5/8 of an inch in from the outside of the cylinder. And this will become the center and will also become the determining point for the diameter of the head of our piece. So I'm going to bring the live center in and fasten it down. And now we go back and tighten up the bolts. And make sure they're good and snug. You don't want this coming loose because if it starts vibrating on you, you could have some serious problems. So it should be about like so. And I'm going to bring my tool rest up and make sure we're not hitting. Get back. You want to get the tool rest obviously as close as you can without hitting the workpiece. And I think we're just about set to go. I'm going to give the lathe a spin here and just to make sure. And now I'm going to switch you back to the overhead camera so you can watch as I turn this thing. I'm going to set my tool rest just a little bit lower here. And again, spin it by hand to make sure that we don't have any contact. The tool of choice here is a spindle roughing gouge. Spindle roughing gouge is actually can be a pretty good finishing tool, and we need to take off an awful lot of material here. So we're going to bring the lathe up to about 650 RPMs. Could probably get a smoother cut if I could go faster, but with as far off balance as this piece is, I don't think we should go much above that. And we're going to start taking it down from right here. Take little gentle cuts. We don't want to go in too quickly. Keep an eye on the tailstock. I noticed it started to loosen up on me there, so I want to make sure that I've got it locked down good and solid. tool rest is a little bit high, so I'm going to stop the lathe and drop the tool rest. You actually never want to move the tool rest while the lathe is running, because if you go just a little bit off one way or the other and catch the workpiece, you have serious problems on your hands. And it's given me a chance to spin the work and see how the cutting is coming. Go back to it here. Okay, time to stop and take a look at our workpiece. I was trying to get a little bit too aggressive in here. That's why we were getting all of the vibration back. And I think my tool is also getting a little bit dull, so I'm going to take a trip to the grinder here and sharpen it up and see if we can get this smoothed out a little better. Okay. Give it a spin to make sure that we're not touching anything. Okay, my tool is a little bit far over the tool rest, so I'm going to move the tool rest to an angle, see if I can get a little bit closer to the area that I'm actually working on here. You don't want the tool to be so far off the rest. It looked like I was probably close to 2.5 to 3 inches off the rest, and that's a little bit far with this particular tool. This should give me a little bit smoother cut. Okay, let's check our work here. We're down to the area that'll become the neck for our little crane, and we're just about to the point that we can start to fashion the head. I want to take a pair of calipers and check my diameter to make sure that I'm about where I think I should be. And we're just slightly over 1 inch. We want the head to be about 1 inch in diameter. So now we're going to stop. I'll bring you in a little bit closer and show you how I set up turning the head. To lay out the head, the first thing we have to do is count for the damage that's created by the spur in our live center. So I'm going to put a mark in at a little more than 1/8 of an inch. It's probably actually closer to 1/4 of an inch. That'll get rid of plenty of the damage there. And now I'm going to remeasure, and I'm right at 1 inch. So I'm going to put a mark here at 1 inch. And that gives us, roughly the blank for our crane's head. Now I want to do a little bit of layout work, because what we're really going to do here is we're turning kind of a sphere on the end of a stick. So do it like so. And now we need to find a parting tool. Like this. And I'm going to give it a spin here just to make sure that I'm clear. And we're turning at about 690 RPMs. At the point now where I want to set the diameter for the neck, and I normally would set that at about half of the diameter that we're going to use for the head itself. So we're going to take this down to a little over 1/2 an inch. And I've actually got quite a bit to go here. So, and by the way, I have a bad habit, and you shouldn't do this. I keep laying the tools on the lathe bed. Not a good thing to do. Tools should be stored off the lathe bed, because if one of them comes off the lathe, vibration, and comes a point down on your foot, you could have a pretty serious problem. So I've got to watch that. And I'm going to switch over to a thin parting tool. Let's see how our diameter looks. We're getting pretty close. Okay, before we go any further, I'm going to switch to a smaller tool rest. And get in a little bit closer. Make sure we're not touching. Yeah, we're clear there. Tool rest is a little bit high. And we're going to pick up a Thompson 3/8" spindle gouge. And we're at the point now where we want to drill a hole for the beak for our little Sandhill crane. So I'm going to rotate him so that he'll be looking towards me here, and maybe a little bit down. This is a 1/8 inch brad point drill bit, and I'm going to go in about like so, and put it at a little bit of an angle so it appears that he's looking down. And I'm only going to drill the hole in maybe a 1/4 of an inch or so. Doesn't need to be very deep. And there's the beak. I'm going to sand the head just a little bit here. and pick up the speed at we'll leave it about there. And I use a sanding product called Rhino Pad. Rhino Pad is a foam pad sander. And let's turn the dust collector on here. You won't be able to hear me probably with this thing running. Now to finish up the neck, I'm going to bring my tool rest in a little bit closer and angle it so that we're not striking the edge here, and do a safety spin. And we're going to go back to the spindle roughing gouge. And we're still turning at, this is about right about 750 RPM. We're able to pick up a little bit of speed, but not very much. The faster I'm able to turn, the smoother the cut, but it also introduces vibration that'll cause the lathe to shake, and so there's not much real advantage in getting the speed up too high. I'm trying to take a gentler cut than I was taking initially with the neck area. I want to try to smooth the cut out to eliminate as much of the bumping as I can. One thing that's really important in off-center turning, particularly, is to watch the shadow. I'm actually not looking at the cutting surface or the cutting area of the tool. I'm watching the area on the opposite side of the workpiece as I turn it. And as I get down closer to the neck area, that shadow gets smaller and smaller and smaller, so I know that I'm getting closer to round. And when I get closer to round, I can get smoother cuts. Okay, let's see how our cut's going here. We're down to where we wanted to be for the what I call the waist area, or the midpoint of the body. A little bit rough in here, so I'm going to try something a little bit different here. Normally you wouldn't use a scraper on an uneven surface like this, but I'm going to use a big negative edge scraper and see if I can straighten this out a little bit. Let's see how we did. It's a lot smoother cut. Just the negative rake scraper actually paid off there, so I'm going to do just a little bit more with it. And I'm taking real light cuts. I don't want to try to take too heavy a cut because that'll introduce vibration. It actually puts quite a bit of stress on this area here. I don't want to do anything to affect that. So I'll scrape it off here. Okay, let's see what we look like. Not bad. Not bad at all. Time to do a little bit of sanding, I think. And we're at the point now where we need to go back to center to turn the rest of the body. Okay, we're actually done with the off-center portion of our project, so now it's time to return our workpiece to dead center. Have to loosen the tailstock up first and withdraw it. Rotate this around so that we're able to loosen the pivot point. And the articulating bolt brings it back to center. And we're going to reinsert the centering pin just to make sure that we're fully accurately centered. And tighten these two up again. And now we have a problem, because as we're turning this, that means that our head is going to be out there flipping around. So we need to have some way to secure this. And the easiest way to do that is with another fixture. There's one other fixture that we're going to be using today. This one goes on the tailstock. And it's nothing more than a piece of rubber mat. I think this is a piece of mouse pad. It's glued to a piece of plywood, to a plywood disc. And on the back side of the plywood disc, there's another glue block, and this glue block has embedded into it a common hardware nut. The thread size on this is 3/4 inch by 10 threads per inch, and that happens to be the same thread size that the one-way Powermatic, Jet, and many other live centers use on their live center. And in use, you lock the bearing on your live center with the knockout rod, and it screws on, and gives you a nice rotation. These glue blocks are really pretty easy to make, this fixture is pretty easy to make. As I said, these nuts are a common hardware nut that you can pick up at just about any home center or hardware store. And when you buy them, you probably buy a bag of 5 of them. That's how most of them come. Also buy a matching bolt, a 3/4 inch 10 bolt, a couple inches long. You don't need much. When you get back into your shop, cut the head off the bolt. That way you can use the bolt as a mandrel when you mount this and turn it. The way that you do that is you take the glue block, the rough glue block, drill a hole in it that's just a little bit undersized to the size of the nut. Take a chisel and square off the corners so that you can embed the nut in it. And then go ahead and embed the nut in with epoxy. Let it sit overnight, make sure it's good and dry. And the next day or whenever you get back to it, take the bolt that you cut the head off from and insert it into your 4-jaw chuck. Make sure that it's running true, but most 4-jaw chucks will allow you to do that. And then screw this on and use the mandrel that you've created to true up the glue block. You want the glue block to run true so that when you glue the plywood to it, the plywood will also run true. Okay, now let's put our tailstock support in place. I'm going to revolve the bearing in the live center, use the knockout rod to secure it. Okay, we don't need much pressure here. We only need enough to make sure that we have support on it. We don't want to drive it in so that it forces the workpiece to bow. This wouldn't be important now, but as we get down here and we're turning the legs, because the legs are going to be, or the leg rather, is going to be about the same size as the neck here. So we want to make sure that we don't put too much pressure on. Do it like so. Turn the lathe speed down to 300 or so, and it looks like everything is running okay. So bring the tool rest up, rotate the workpiece to make sure we're not colliding with anything. And kind of plan our cut here. We'll get our speed up. We'll be able to go a little bit faster here. Get a little bit cleaner cut probably. Light cuts are what you want here. Let's check our progress, see how we're doing. Okay, we're pretty close to where we want to be. We just need to smooth this out a little bit. I need to take lighter cuts in here. Okay. Try to straighten this out with a scraper. I'm going to leave this alone for now. I think I will do some sanding on here. Okay, got a little bit too aggressive in this area here, so I left our crane with a little bit of an Adam's apple there, but I guess that's all right. Now we want to concentrate on the body. And I'm going to actually make the body about that thick. Let's put a mark on that. And the easiest way to start the body is with a parting tool. going to start planning our cut here a little bit. We want to start the cut in here and roughly meet this area, so we'll start like so. I'm going to take a little bit off here. Let's see how we're doing here. It's getting there. Need to take off a little bit more here. Here we go, laying tool on the lathe bed again. I'm going to use a little bit more aggressive parting tool there. Take off a little more material, go a little bit deeper. Trying to leave enough mass here so that I can, reduce vibration and get smoother cuts up here. Okay. We're a little bit far off the tool rest, so I'm going to come in a little bit closer and give her a spin here. Check our progress here. And I'm going to switch to a half-inch spindle gouge. That's about the diameter I think that I want for our leg. So need to move the tool rest So I can take this area down a little bit more. Get her up as close as I can without interfering with our turning. And we're running it right at 1,000 RPMs now. Back to the spindle gouge. Tool rest is a little bit high. And I think I'm going to try to straighten that out with a round nose scraper. Again, negative rake scraper should help me get rid of the tear out that I've got there. Tool rest in as close as I can. Okay. We'll do a little bit of sanding, and then we'll take him off the chuck. I'm going to sand at about 400 or so RPMs. You don't want to sand too fast. And unfortunately, dust collector goes on now. Okay, and now we need to part him off. And loosen the tailstock just a bit. Still needs support there, so I'm not loosening it all the way, but turn speed down. And for this I need a thin parting tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the cut right at the glue line and then tip the tool a little bit to the left. So I'm actually cutting to the right. That'll undercut the base a little bit, and hopefully that'll give me a surface that will sit flat on a table or on wherever the piece is going to be. So bring up the speed to 500, should be about right. And I'm getting in far enough now that I can feel the tool starting to bind, so I'm going to start a relief cut. The relief cuts go straight in. The relief cut is in to the same depth that the slanted cut was in. So now I'm going to go back and take out a little bit more in the base. And I'm down to probably about 1.25 inches of the piece into the glue block. And I think I want to stop about here, about where I am. I don't want to go clear through this, again, because I'm afraid if I go clear through it, I'll get a bind, and it'll bind against the tailstock and break the neck off or the legs off. So I'm going to stop here and shut the lathe down. And we'll loosen the tailstock up. And I have a little knife, or a saw rather, that I've had for years that's really handy for cutting through stuff like this. I'm going to pull this back, and we'll saw away. Okay. And there's our little guy. We have a couple of things to do yet to finish him off. We have to sand the base, of course. We have to get rid of this, and we also have to turn a beak for him. So we'll be back to do that in just a minute. While we were off camera, I made a few equipment changes. I swapped out the jaws on my Nova chuck and dug out a piece of sapele from the scrap bins, a piece that's about a 1/2 inch square, probably a little more than I actually need for a beak. And another equipment change that we're going to talk about in a little more detail is the live center that I have here. You'll notice that I have a longer tip on the live center with a very small point on it. This is the standard point that comes with the one-way style or Powermatic live centers. And the reason that I've gone to this for these types of projects, I've got a little more working room around it. You'll see the reason for that later when we get into the turning. I've got a little more working room around it, and I've got a much smaller point that does damage to the end of my workpiece. Now, this particular live center point one that I obtained from a Canadian manufacturer who unfortunately is no longer producing them. However, if you are interested in these, Cindy Drosta makes them too. And Cindy offers a complete set. Hers are very similar to the ones that I have here. They include like a 60-degree cone, another miniature spur life. So this one's even smaller than the one that I have in the Life Center now. Uh, this one has a blunt end on it, and here's one with a recess in it. These come in pretty handy, especially when you're doing small things like ornaments and so forth. Ordinarily, I make the beak about an inch long, so to take this down to round first, using a Thompson 3/8" spindle gouge. I'm going to switch over to a skew. See if I can get a little bit cleaner cut there to reduce the amount of sanding that I have to do. Okay. The tailstock goes away. now we need to fit the mortise, I'm sorry, the tenon that goes in the mortise that we drilled in the head. And for that, we're going to use ordinary parting tool. Let's see what our diameter is. We're just a little bit thick there, and we'll take it down just a little more. A little more to go. Okay. A little sanding now. Bring the lathe speed down to about 400. This is, by the way, this sanding media that I'm using is Rhino Pad 180 grit. 180 is actually the coarsest grit that they make in this particular product. So we're down to a nice smooth surface there. So take a 240 grit to finish up. And now we need to part him off. And to part it off, bring the turn off the lathe before we move the tool rest. Bring the tool rest up and bring it up a little bit higher. Just so we're clear of the jaws. Spin the piece to make sure we're clear. And what I have here is a superfine parting tool. This is actually a tool that's made by a fellow named Don Derry. And this tool is designed for very small work, especially on ornaments. Comes in very handy to make a real fine parting cut. Okay, and there's our beak. So now we have to clean up the base of the piece. We'll back off here, get the tailstock back out of the way, and need to remove the chuck. And replace it with a sanding pad. And we'll run up to about, 450, 500 RPMs, should be fine. Okay, let's see if the beak fits. Yeah, it's a little tight, but yeah, I can take care of that. Got a little more sanding to do, but there's our little guy. And here's our finished piece. Stands just under 10 inches tall, made out of soft maple, sanded to 320 grit, and finished with 2 coats of polyurethane.